Welcome back to MVM. Today we're taking a look at the game Titania Ascending from XYZ Game Labs. This is a cooperative flip and right game where you are working at the behest of the Fae Queen Titania to conquer the lands of humankind. The queen once controlled the land, she gave it back to the humans, she split her crown up into 6 pieces and she let them rule. But they squandered that rule. She has gathered you together as her generals to plan an assault on the human world to collect all of the pieces of her crown, put them back together, and then invade and conquer the kingdom. So it's kind of a big theme there for this game. Now, like I said, it is a cooperative flip and right. It can be played competitively and also in solo mode. I'm going to talk about the cooperative experience here because that is, I think, the most appealing to me, the most interesting version of this game. But all 3 versions are great and they all play the same way. So you're going to have a really good idea of how all of those different versions play. Now, like I said, this is a flip and right, so there's a few things you're going to recognize. Of course, everyone gets a pad of paper. In this case, that paper is a map that represents the kingdom. There's a few other things on this map that you're going to be filling in as you play, but really you're just looking at the map of the kingdom itself. You're going to have, of course, your writing utensil, your player aid that talks about what all the different icons mean, and then you're going to have a bunch of different cards. These cards are broken down into 2 different types of decks. You have your order cards, which represent different symbols and patterns that you're going to be drawing on your map, and you have your event cards, which are going to determine the difficulty of the game. These event cards are going to come in green, yellow, and red colors, and you're going to be able to build this event deck as you wish to kind of tailor the difficulty to your team. If you want a super easy game, you can use all greens, all reds for a super hard game, and any kind of combination in between. But you're going to set these aside. They're going to be triggered out over the course of the game. The other thing you're going to see is this bag here. This is the Rune Bag. At the start of the game, you're going to place all of the runes in this bag, give it a good shuffle, and these are going to be dealt out randomly. Unlike a lot of flip and rights where you just flip a card and everybody does the thing that's on the card, you're actually going to get a choice here. There's going to be 3 cards dealt out in the middle of the table. Each one's going to have a rune dealt out from that bag as well. These runes can represent 2 different things. Number 1, they're going to have a symbol that represents which type of Fae ally is assigned to that rune, and there's going to be a number. That number represents the strength of a dragon. Now, there are 2 different types of forces in the game. You have your dragons, which are represented by numbers on your player board, and you have your Fae, which are represented by the symbols. There's 6 different types of Fae. They all do different things, and there are up to 6 strength of dragons. Now, you might think that the 6 is the strongest, that's all you need, but you don't. You actually want to have all of the different numbers on your map, and you want to have all of the different symbols on your map, and I'll explain why. Now, of course, you're going to see on this map just a variety of different icons. You're also going to see some letters and numbers. Those letters and numbers represent the different columns and rows that make up the game, and you're going to get a bonus if you fill a column or row. You're going to fill in that little dot at the top, and it's going to give you what's called a boon that you can spend over the course of the game. But you're also going to see, more importantly, the hammer symbols, which represent recruitment icons, and the crowns, which represent citadels. Those are kind of the key focuses of the game. You're going to need to place Fae or dragons in those citadels to kind of plan out your attack. Your goal for the first half of the game is to collect 6 of those, or to mark 6 of those citadels down on the board. I'll explain how that works in a second, but I will tell you, you don't want to just rush to complete all 6. Now, you're going to deal out those cards in the center, and each card has a variety of different things on it. It's going to have a pattern that's represented on a 3x3 grid. This pattern is going to be the pattern that you have to place on your player board. You're going to look at those symbols. You can arrange this however you want. You can flip it, mirror it, however you need to do it. Of course, this is also going to be attached with a particular rune, and you're going to use both of those when you take your turn. Now, whoever's turn it is going to be the one to decide which card is used, but everyone is going to draw that same symbol, including the dragons, potentially, and the icon of the Fae. Now, whenever you see a dragon symbol, you don't know exactly what strength that dragon's going to be, but you're going to look down at the bottom token, and it's going to tell you. This could be any number of different numbers on the bottom going up to 6. Whatever one happens to be below that card, that's how strong your dragon's going to be. Some cards, like this one, the Phoenix, have symbols that are not Fae. They're just the logo of the game. What that means, it's kind of a random or wild Fae. You're going to look at the bottom. Again, you're going to look at the symbol side of that rune token, and that's going to tell you what symbol is represented there. So those cards give you some kind of variety. They're not going to be the same every time. And there are ways in the game to spend those boons I was talking about to activate different powers in order to actually wipe these, switch them around, or swap them to your heart's content. Now, let's say it's my turn and I'm choosing that puck card to draw on my map. So if I were to draw this symbol on my map, I have several different places to place it, especially considering that my map is empty at this point. But if I want to assign one of these symbols to the crown, I can, but like I said, I'm signifying that that unit is responsible for that crown. You're going to see that this area is divided into zones A, B, C, D, E, and F, and then you'll have the rows 1 through 6 here. You're going to look at these numbers, and these are going to correspond to the crowns that you see down here. Again, A through F. So whatever unit I assign to the A crown, I'm going to color in that unit down here or write that unit down so I know that I have to send that particular unit there. So for this instance, I could write the 2 dragons and I could put the pixie on that crown if I wished. I would take the dragon, which is a 5. I would place a 5 in each one of these spaces and use your own artistic ability. You would draw the wings here in this space. Now, of course, I'm no great illustrator, but I have assigned this pixie to the A crown. So I will come down here and I will mark that this is supposed to be taken by a pixie. Of course, again, my fantastic drawing here. So this is going to be signifying to all players that I'm the one that assigned this here. Now there's another place you can assign, and that is here to these little hammers that represent building sites. If I were to assign the pixie there instead, so for example, pretend I did a different illustration. Maybe I wanted to come down here. I'd place the 5 here, the 5 here, and this pixie here instead. I would do things a little differently. Instead of assigning them to that particular crown, I'm actually going to assign them to this building icon, and I'm going to summon that pixie. So if you look down here at these different spaces, I'll actually have that pixie available to summon. So you can mark that however you want to mark it so that you know you have that aid available. This aid is going to trigger a specific power. And of course, those powers are all referenced here on your player aid. Each aid gives you something specific or different. You're going to use these aids by triggering these hammer abilities down here. And you're going to earn these boons by filling up complete rows or columns on your player sheet here to fill in these things. So for example, if I had numbers or symbols all the way up on my board here, I could signify this one complete. And the same thing goes if I went all the way across. And of course, I'm just going to draw some of the symbols in here that represent the different types of Fae that you could summon. And again, you're going to be signifying that's complete. So you'll have these boons available and players can use them. Your first time is going to cost 0 boons, then 1, then 2, and then 3 boons, all the way up to potentially 9 boons. Now these boons are used collectively, but they're also paid for collectively. So for example, if I decide that I want to trigger the boon that costs 1, everyone crosses off that boon. Nobody at the table can use that boon anymore. But let's say we get up to some of the higher numbers. For example, a boon that costs 5. If I only have 3 boons to pay on my board, that's fine. I can have another player pay 1, another player pay 1, or even if it's my turn, one player can just pay 5. However you want to do it at the table, this is another level of that cooperation that happens in the cooperative game because you have to use these boons. I mean, these powers are too good to ignore. Now, you're going to want to save some of those boons for the second half of the game, but I'll talk about that in a second. Now, when you're placing these symbols in the citadels, or you're summoning these different Fae as aids, you're only doing that once per turn. And also, only one player can claim any one citadel. So once a citadel is claimed, it's actually kind of just a dead citadel. You don't need to worry about it anymore. You've already got that written down on your Hallowed Citadels sheet, so that's all that really kind of matters. But once you're done with your turn and everyone has taken the symbol and you've decided which aids are being summoned, which citadels are being assigned, you're going to discard the card and the tile, and you're going to replace it with a new card from the deck and a new tile randomly drawn from the bag. This is where you could end up with those event cards. Some of these tiles just show the event symbol, in which case you're going to draw one of the event cards and it's going to affect everyone at the table. There are two types of events. There are some that just have a one-time effect that cause you to do something specific. And these are always bad. There's not any that are secretly kind of going to help you. They're going to be some sort of detriment. And there's also some that are going to flip over and stay in play and have some kind of ongoing ability that's going to negatively affect the game until another one is drawn. So you kind of have to watch out for those. Now, there's some logic that could be said that you might want to rush through this first phase of the game, but there's a twist here. Like I said, the game is divided into two parts. We have this divination phase. This is kind of the planning phase that we're doing. That planning phase is not going to end until we trigger 6 of the citadels, or until we've assigned a Fae or a dragon number to all 6 of the citadels. You can do that theoretically in 6 turns if each player just places 1. In doing so, you're going to lessen the chance of triggering events. You're going to speed through that game. You might not see these events, but trust me, you're going to want to cover as much of your board as possible before you move on to the next phase. You'll see why when I talk about what actually happens there during the Ascension phase, but you really want numbers and symbols across your whole board. Not only that, you want a variety of different things on your board too, because you're going to see there's going to be missions that you have to send your Fae on, and it's going to be a completely different experience, but you don't want to just take 6 turns. You really want to control the pacing of that, and you want to move on to the Ascension phase when everybody is ready. Now, if you get to a point where a player can no longer take one of these cards, then they just have to pass and they're out to the next phase. But once you've gone around enough times, you've triggered all 6 citadels, or you have assigned something to all 6 citadels, you've filled out all of your hollowed citadel sheet, then you're going to move on to the next phase of the game. Now, there's a little trick to these cards that you haven't seen yet. They're actually double-sided. On the back of each one of these summoning cards, there's actually a missions card. And you're going to flip these over to reveal the bottom. Now, this is just a prototype, so I don't have all the final components. But these cards are actually going to sit in a card tray. And when you're done with that round, you just flip the whole tray over. And now you're looking at the other side of the card, the Ascension side of the game. This is where the game changes. Now you're no longer planning your assault. Now you're actually carrying out that assault. Your new goal is to actually capture the citadels that you planned to capture during the game. So this is a completely different experience. And you're even going to see on these cards that they look a little different. They've got different symbols on them. In fact, you're not going to see the Fae icons at the bottom, but you are going to see these symbols here at the top. These represent a requirement that you have to use this card. And then down here, it's going to show you some kind of shape that you have to fill in on your player board. So let's take a look at this card, Hold the Lines. Let's say that I take this card and I play this card on my turn during the Ascension phase. You'll notice, of course, the grid is still the same. The 3x3 grid is still present, but you're not so much worried about what the symbols are anymore. You're just worried about these patterns. However, each one of these missions has an objective. For example, this one here says you have to have 3 consecutive values of dragons. For example, 1, 2, or 3. This mission here requires you to have 3 of the same Fae somewhere in this pattern. This one requires you to have a series of dragons that are even within this pattern. I cannot cover any odd dragons. However, I can cover other types of units, and since I'm invading from outside the kingdom, I can actually use this purple. So let's look here where I have this 2 and this 4 dragon. I can start to cover this in because I can potentially make this pattern 2, 2, and 1. Notice I only covered even. So that means I successfully completed the mission. What this also means is that every other player can now draw this symbol. They don't have to worry about the top part. I completed the top part for everyone, so all they're worrying about now is making this symbol somewhere on their board. Now, after everybody has filled in that particular shape, you can look at the rune symbol that's on the bottom of that particular card. In this case, I have a 4, and this symbol that represents a siren. Any one player can either send the siren or the 4 dragon on a raid in their kingdom. To do so, they're either going to color in the siren or that 4. If you do that, you can come down to those hollowed citadels that you had assigned earlier, and I can see, did I have one that needed a 4 dragon? I do. We can all color in that particular citadel banner to show that we have now completed that objective. We have sent in that particular unit, the 4 of dragons, to take the citadel. So we've got 1 citadel down. The goal here is to capture all 6 of those citadels like we planned. And you're going to have to assign the right icon each time. So now things get a little bit more difficult because as you're replacing these cards, you have to hope that the Fae that come out match the Fae symbols that you need to complete these particular objectives, which is why when you're assigning during the planning phase or the divination phase, it's good to have a wide variety of numbers and symbols. That way you have a really good chance of what you need coming out. If you just put the same number across all those banners, the chances of actually being able to complete them are slim. So if you have a variety, there should always be an option. Now, there are ways to cancel out all of those, and there are powers you can use to change the runes so that you have a better shot at getting the runes that you need out. But the other reason that it becomes difficult is because the player that's choosing has to be able to complete one of the 3 missions. So if I have an option and I can complete all 3, but I choose the only one you can complete, I might be putting you in a bad spot. If you're in a bad spot, you have to pass, you're out of the game. If everyone passes in that manner, then the game is over and you lose. So you have to plan all that out. You have to talk again with everyone at the table. Communication is so key in this game because you need to figure out which of these missions that people can complete. Also, do you have room to fill in those particular shapes on your board? If you're assigning a shape that I can't fill, I have to pass and I'm eliminated again. So again, working with everyone at the table really matters here. The third reason it matters is because you need particular runes. So if I'm looking at a mission here that has the last rune that we need to figure out who at the table can complete that mission. If no one can, then we're going to have to find a way to get more runes out and try to have another chance at that. But you really need to be able to spread this work out as much as possible. There's a great amount of planning that has to happen in that divination phase, and a great amount of teamwork and communication that has to happen in this ascension phase. But if you can check off all 6 hallowed citadels saying that you have assigned all the units you said you would assign during the divination phase, then you win. It's simple as that, right? Sure, yes. This game is unlike any game that I've ever seen, and if these concepts seem foreign to you or hard to kind of digest, that's because you've probably never seen or played anything quite like this before. It's very unique. It does a lot of really varied, unique things. So I recommend taking a look at the Kickstarter page to see just better maybe examples or final components of what everything here is going to look like. I think they'll also have the solo rules available to download, so you can actually play this game solo. And like I hinted at earlier, you can play it competitively, each player trying to build out the best battle plan and conquer the kingdom better than any other player at the table. You can play that way, of course, but I just want to suggest again, at least try this cooperative mode because it does a lot of really cool things and it brings a completely kind of new experience that you've probably never seen in a roll and write before. So that is Titania Ascending. This game is on Kickstarter, so take a look at that page. You can see all of the stretch goals and things that they might have planned for that campaign. And as always, thank you for liking, subscribing, following us here at MVM. Please hit that like button, comment below, let me know what you're most excited about when it comes to this game, and please keep having fun at the table.
Congratulations, you got to the end of one of our videos. Now, if you want more practice, just click on the video over here. It's another video. You might not have seen it yet, so click on it. If you don't want to do that, at least click on the subscription button below. That always helps us. And if you want notifications, please ring that bell.